So it's the day before the game, a huge one, the biggest one of this November tour, England, South Africa. And I'm here with Gavin Rich as per normal. We thought we'd do something, bit of a preview and just talk about sort of some of the talking points before the game. And Gav, yeah, I'm far away, but from the little bit I've picked up is England's been really, some of their writers have been really trying to make this a almost grudge match. But I don't know if it's really been landing that well.
Well, yeah, I actually don't understand this grudge talk because the Springboks won last year in a game that was a World Cup semi-final, which is very different to a game which Joe Marler, the now ex-England prop, said during the week, or was it last week? He said that these autumn internationals are really glorified friendlies, which they are compared to a World Cup. So it's not really revenge, and I think that. I did say in a story earlier this week, or maybe it was last week, something about, I can't remember what the point I was making, but the one thing that man has learned from history is that man doesn't learn from history. Well, the one thing we do know from relatively recent history is that being too hyped up for a game revolved around revenge can actually trip you up. And I think that did happen to an extent to Ireland last week. I think they were a little bit, having watched that game now a few times on video, they just looked as if they were a little bit too. They felt they had too much to lose. The way they were celebrating, like a thing like James Lowe's 50-22 kick, a couple of the big hits. They were almost too emotional about that game, whereas New Zealand were a lot less emotional and more clinical, and it was exemplified in the fact that New Zealand only conceded 5 penalties in that match. I can't remember what Ireland did. I think it was 13 or 14.
Yeah, it felt very much to me this week, the stuff I've been reading online and stuff, and I haven't been in the press conferences, but it felt very much like there's a lot of pressure heaping on Steve Borthwick. If he loses this one, he's basically lost all 3 autumn internationals, and almost like the UK press are trying to sort of shift that sort of focus away from it, trying to give him that sort of leeway. And of course, I mean, I've seen, I saw there was a thing in the Telegraph again about how the pantomime villains again, and how Russie's sort of trying to make the Boks more palatable for the UK guys is not working, and they're still going to never be universally loved. And I don't think the Boks really care that much about that. I know they do. They want to be, their brand wants to be good. They want to be seen as almost like the same sort of level as the All Blacks 2011 to 2015. But I think at the end of the day, the Boks want to win this game more than anything else, and they know what they mean to South Africa. So this whole thing about them being the villains in England, you're never going to change some people's minds, as we've seen in some people like Stephen Jones and then, who just seem to just want to criticize no matter what the Boks do.
We're talking about rugby. We're talking about a sport. So you do your talking on the field, and the Springboks can win people over by playing an attractive brand of rugby, which I think they are doing to some extent. I don't think there's too many people who can sort of claim that the South Africans are playing that old style of rugby where they played those very narrow channels, and the players were spread across a very narrow section of the field. They've definitely changed, and I think that's where the game might be won on Saturday, is that the Boks have, with Marnie at fly half, they have the ability to actually play several different ways, and they probably will. They'll mix it up, and I don't know if England have the ability to do that. Their selection of Freddie Stewart at fullback surprised me, although I do understand it from the point of view of the change of the laws regarding escort runners. But and you mentioned Stephen Jones just now. I just found that whole that whole sort of charade around the what do they call it, the bomb squad, the 7-1 split last week. But this week it's a 5-3 split. So, what are they going to, what is the excuse going to be this time if England lose? Because they can't say, well, it was the bomb squad. It seems to be a perennial excuse for overseas scribes and for even coaches to sort of say, well, the bomb squad changed the game. But this isn't a game where it's because I still think they do have a bomb squad. I think because the Boks are so strong at prop in the front row, and because somebody like Pieter-Steph du Toit is also so good at lock, which isn't his normal position, you actually do still have that bomb squad effect. I mean, Elric can play 8, 6, 7, and I think he can play lock if he has to. Kwagga Smith can play anywhere in the back 3. They still do have that bomb squad effect. But I just thought when I saw that team yesterday, I was quite cock-a-hoop about that, because I thought, well, we've got to take that narrative out of it. And I haven't seen anybody in England actually sort of mention, well, hang on a minute, the Boks actually aren't relying on their bomb squad configuration. As I say, they still have a bomb squad because the depth of their, and it's actually interesting, Brendan, like, listening to the guys in New Zealand, watching breakdown earlier this week, Jeff Wilson and those guys, and how the narrative has changed in some of the other countries. New Zealand are determined to create, and Jeff Wilson was quite right. He said, I won't call it a bomb squad because that's for another country, meaning for South Africa. But he was quite right when earlier this week, and the other guys on the show with him, they were saying, well, we're starting to build our depth. We're starting to create our own version of the bomb squad. And that's really what should happen in the sports that are evolving constantly, rather than complain about it, because South Africa happens to have enough depth to be able to use their bench to shift the momentum of rugby matches, which is actually what a bench is for. Jake White is quite right when he calls the Bulls bench the impact squad, because that's what it was. Eddie Jones, I remember at the 2019 World Cup, I was there, I was at the press conference. He took on one of the English journalists because he was talking about, I think it was Ford being dropped, and Eddie said, mate, get with the times. He said, rugby these days is about a 23-man sport, and it's been a 23-man sport for several years now. So if there was a problem with it, people should have complained about it before the Springboks started to win this way, and before New Zealand and other teams started to evolve in the same direction. It's actually funny, South Africa have a 5-3 split tomorrow, so do England, but last week Scotland had a 6-2 split. And other weeks, England sometimes have a 6-2 split. New Zealand have a 6-2 split often these days as well. So, I mean, we're moving away from, so people are following South Africa as people tend to when evolution is happening.
I saw an article this week where Matt Proudfoot was interviewed, and he made the point as well. He said that, far from, as Stephen Jones called Russie arrogant by doing that, I just feel he probably would call Russie arrogant no matter what Russie does. He could pick 8 backs on the bench, and he would say that's arrogant. But Matt Proudfoot made the point that every single innovator, when Gary Owen sort of launched the up and unders, people criticized it then. Every time rugby's evolved in a little way, and what rugby doesn't do is doesn't celebrate innovators. And in a way, that's a compliment, because the fact that people want to criticize you almost tell you that you're doing something right, because you're no longer somebody's second best team. Second favorite team now you're a threat. And I think that's what the Boks are. I think England are frustrated that they didn't win that semi-final, or their journos at least. And Steve Borthwick is not the Clive Woodward that they have at this moment, and they're struggling, and they're losing narrow games, and they are still a good team. But I just find some of the sort of the narratives around this game, it's almost like, they're still stuck in 2020 or 2021 with the Lions tour, that they were so pissed off about what Russie did about the ref video, that now they haven't moved on at all, where the Boks have actually moved on quite a bit from those days. And we talk about Marnie, and it's an interesting selection, because Freddie Stewart obviously there, because it sounds like they're going to try and play the same sort of style and put the Boks under pressure with the boot on Saturday. But I think Marnie in that World Cup, the Bok mindset on attack was very different to what it is now under Tony Brown. And the Boks are a lot, if you look at Nelspruit, the way Marnie played, the Boks are a lot more cohesive, even though they're still not the finished article yet. They're getting to the point where they're a lot more confident in their own abilities in attacking, where I think in the World Cup at times, there was so much doubt in Marnie's kicking that they sometimes filtered through onto the attack. And everything I've seen about England has been about Marcus Smith. He's a great autumn series so far, and he's playing with a lot of confidence. But it's going to be interesting to see how those two flyers match up against each other.
Well, there are two key elements of that game that you're talking about last year that everybody's overlooking. Even some of the South African, I haven't seen any of the South African journalists write it either. I have written it a few times this week. That game was played in wet weather. That semi-final was played in wet weather. Those conditions conspired in favour of England, who in those days were playing a type of rugby that where you hardly passed the ball. I mean, it was just one-off runners. It was just keep the ball. If I remember correctly, Owen Farrell and with full play, they played a very kicking orientated game in that match. But they were helped by the fact that it was wet weather. And conversely, Marnie wasn't helped by the fact that it was wet weather. He's not really a good, even though he's at the Cape at the moment where supposedly you get wet. Actually, we don't have, it's not a winter sport necessarily anymore. So we wouldn't actually say that wet weather is what you expect in rugby matches in Cape Town. It's a lot of the games are played in summer when it's dry. But I mean, Marnie isn't a wet weather player. I'm not sure if Russie would have chosen him to start on Saturday if the weather forecast was that there was an 80% chance of rain. At the moment, it looks like there's no chance of rain. It will be a dry game, although it is at night, and often the ball is slippery at night. So there is that to take into account. And the other factor that people aren't taking into account is that when the Boks played against England last year, they had played the game of the century against France just 6 days earlier. Remember, it was a Sunday night game. They played the game of the century then, and it was almost like a World Cup final. It was almost impossible for the Boks not to go into that following week feeling that they'd already played their final. It's just one of those things that happens. England might know that from what happened to them in 2019. Maybe England had South Africa in the place that they were 4 years earlier in Yokohama when they played them in Paris in last year's semi-final, and they weren't able to take advantage. South Africa got out of that. They managed to slip the noose. And that's why I'm confident about a Bok win tomorrow, because there aren't those other factors at play this time. They haven't just played France. They played against Scotland, where it was clear to me that they had their eyes on Twickenham. Their whole selection was revolved around Twickenham and not really about what they were going to do against Scotland. And they haven't played a really tough opponent that they're now sort of like going into the following week, and having beaten them, they feel that they're on that emotional high that they've got to get down from. There wasn't an emotional high. It was actually a good thing that the Boks didn't hit the straps against Scotland and bring their A game, because if they had, then maybe they would actually be right for the picking on Saturday. But no, they know they've got to improve. They had a wake-up call last week, and that's always dangerous when you're talking about the Boks.
I think the one thing on England's side though is that they've been through 2 hard contests, so they should be battle hardened for this game, and their forwards aren't a bad pack. Whether they can stand up to 80 minutes of physicality from the Boks, we wait to see. But I think Sam Underhill coming in, he's a definite threat at the breakdown. We saw the last weeks the Boks struggled a bit at the breakdown with the way Scotland played, and England would have taken note of that. And Jared Cunningham Smythe, or whatever his long name is, he's also he's a decent player. He's impressed in these internationals, so that England can give the Boks quite a bit of hassle at the breakdown and slow down their ball. I'm sure the Boks would have noted that. They would have prepared for that. So, it'll be interesting to see. But that's the one area I think that England can disrupt the Boks quite badly. Other than that, I mean, the aerial contest is going to be the aerial contest. I think they're going to pepper the 2 wingers a lot. They're going to try that again. I'm not worried about our 2 scrum cap wingers. They're pretty decent at that. And they're great counter-attackers as well. Twickenham should be a fast game. So, I mean, if the Boks can get some good fast front football, I think they'll do pretty well. But I think the only threat really for me for the Boks is the fact that England, one, are desperate, they battle hardened, and they can cause the Boks some problems. And if you get a bad start, that always also can count against you. But saying that, the Boks, I mean, they find ways of winning. They know how to win. They can revert to type A if they need to.
Yeah, well, I think that the Boks have their strongest scrumming pack tomorrow. I'm not denigrating Frans Malherbe when I say that Wilco. I'm not saying that Wilco is better than France, but he's a very destructive scrummager, and we've got Arke Snyman back. I just think that the way they set up for the scrum tomorrow, with Malcolm on the bench and Gerard Steenekamp and Vincent Koch. Okay, I mean, those guys are always on the bench, but I mean, I just think that the Boks up against an England team that still has Dan Coles coming in from the bench, and we know what happened to him in the World Cup final in Japan. I just think that they don't have the depth to live with the Springbok scrum. I don't think their first choice scrum has the ability to live with the first choice scrum. So, and it was interesting to see. I think it was a column I read by Courtney Laws talking about, well, England have to be clever. They have to get free kicks at the put-ins, which is what we were all saying was the new law. The adjustment around the hit, the scrum hit was going to, that you couldn't take another scrum from a free kick. England want to be clever around that, but that's an admission that they yeah, that's an admission that they know that they're really up against it in the
Mm.
scrums Saturday. And Courtney Laws will know that because he played for England the last time they played against South Africa. So that's an area where the Springboks, I think, are going to be dominant on Saturday. And if they're dominant and they've got front football for Mani, and then Mani will cook. I mean, obviously, there's a big caveat, and that's that Mani has to kick his goals. I remember there's another aspect which we haven't, which nobody's really discussed as well, is that England. Okay, it's only been 2 games, I suppose, but Twickenham is become sort of almost like South Africa's second home. Remember, it was there that South Africa beat New Zealand 35-7 last year. Mani cooked in that game. And it was just a few months ago that South Africa beat Wales at Twickenham. So it's not a stadium or environment that's new to South Africa or that alien to South Africa as maybe some other places are. And I do remember that All Black game. Mani sort of had them in such trouble on the gain line in that game behind that dominant pack. And if South Africa can get that kind of dominance, then I don't know if Mani's kicking is going to matter that much, because England do have defensive issues, and against a team with Mani Lebok in it, we could be seeing the Springboks going up in increments of 5, which they won't need the 3s.
I think to the one thing you talk about the pack being like that, the one thing that Erke Snyman also brings to the Bok attack is that amazing offload ability that he has, ability to get, because he's just so large, get his arms over the defender, and that you didn't have with the Franco Mostert or Ruan Okian necessarily. So I think, and he's not going to lose many lineouts either. So that also helps him a lot. So I don't know. To me, yeah, I know we're South African. I know we want the Boks to win, but I can't see, if things go right for the Boks, I can see them winning quite well. But I think England are going to keep it probably tight on us for the first 40, 50 minutes, and we'll see how the impact comes off the bench. But I don't know if it's going to be as tight as last year at all.
Remember when it comes to the Springbok setup for this game and the lineouts as well, is that last week they started without Peter Steff. And he does make, that extra option in the line. I know that the other guys can jump as well, but having Peter Steff in the line out does make a huge difference as well. So, I just think that when I saw Russie's team, in fact, I felt when I saw Russie's team yesterday, I thought, great, that's brilliant for South Africa. And then when I saw England's team and I saw Freddie Stewart at the back, I sort of thought, well, that's also actually in Russie's favour, because I don't think that they know that Mani was going to be starting in fly half. And I think Mani will pose. I know he didn't do it last year because of the wet weather and because England were just up for that game and the Springboks were a little bit off their game. But Mani has the ability to expose Stewart's rather pedestrian sort of passage around the field. He's not the quickest fullback in the world. He's not the greatest when getting across. I mean, he's great under the high ball if you kick it directly to him, but he's not really that great getting across the field and getting across the backfield to field balls. And that's where Mani is brilliant, because he's the sort of guy who'll look that way and kick that way. And England could be in a lot of trouble for that. And I'd love to know not that you could ever find out, and I wrote it in my SuperSport preview this morning, but I'd love to know if Steve Borthwick was maybe a little bit surprised by the selection of Mani, because I think you and I thought that Pollard would play just because from that goal kicking aspect. What we came across as soothsayers, because I remember when you were talking to me about the England backline deficiency, I mean the defensive deficiency, I remember saying to you, I said, well, it makes it sound like Mani should be playing, and not only that, they should be going for a 5-3 bench. Although I was thinking of Willie as a cover on the bench, but I'm actually really pleased that Lukhanyo Am's there as well, because as I think we spoke about earlier this week, he does seem to have that stepping game back, and he's become a slippery customer. I think the Springboks just have so much depth across the board in that 23.
If Mani does struggle kicking, I take it we probably sing Cheslin as the backup kicker at that point. I'm trying to think who else there could be.
Depends how early he wants to send on Pollard. Look, I mean, I know Damien.
Well, that's also true.
Damien Delendi was a very good place kicker when he was at school. There's the other thing as well. There's the other thing that we mustn't forget is that, and knowing Russie, I mean, he hasn't done it for a while, but knowing Russie, it could happen, is that it might be Delendi who goes off and Pollard comes on as centre in the second half. Then you retain the Mani Lebok impact at number 10. So Mani at 10 and Pollard at 12. Remember that Russie in the previous World Cup cycle used to do that with with Elton Yancey sometimes. He used to bring Elton Yancey's on towards the end, and Pollard would shift to 12. And as you know, he is a very decent number 12.
I think we must get to predictions so we don't talk for 45 minutes again about this.
Okay.
Your prediction for the game?
My prediction for the game is the Boks will win by more than a score. I'm not going to say by how much, but I think that they're going to win comfortably. I've got a good feeling about this game for the Boks. Not quite as much as the game in Nelspruit a couple of weeks ago, where I was also quite bullish, but certainly I think that I'd be surprised if England are within a score of South Africa at the final whistle tomorrow.
Look, I think if the Boks get a fast start, it's going to be very hard for England. That's the thing. I think England's best chance is if they can keep it as close as possible for the first half. But I think the Boks are always going to be too strong. I agree, more than a score, but yeah, I'm always a bit wary of going too bullish on these things, as you know. I never get too bullish, but I think more than a score. I agree with that. Quickly on the other games,
I've been quite conservative. Sorry, I've actually been quite conservative when I say more than a score, because I think it could actually be significantly more than a score. So I actually am still being conservative. I mean, it could be quite a few scores more.
Well, let's hope. I think we'll all enjoy it if it is. Just the other games quickly. Ireland Argentina. It's an intriguing one. Everything favors Ireland bouncing back because Argentina aren't great normally on these tours, but it's certainly a good test for them.
Well, the thing about Argentina is we've seen them. We know their trend, that they cook one week and then the next week they fall off, and it's been like that the whole year. I didn't really watch that much of their game against Italy last week, but they did score 50 points. So clearly that was a weekend where they cooked. Ireland, by contrast, had they beaten the All Blacks last week, I think they might have been right for the picking for Argentina in this game. In fact, that would have been, I would have actually almost then sort of been prepared to back the Pumas, because they would have been on the high after beating the All Blacks. But they didn't beat them. I think there have been recriminations in Irish rugby and in the Irish media. So I think Ireland will be up for this game, but I don't think they're going to win by much. I think it's going to be a sort of a workman-like win. I think ugly rugby actually might prevail in quite a few games this weekend. But anyway, carry on. Next game.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, I mean, to me also, I can't see Ireland losing. I'd love Argentina to win, obviously, but I don't see Ireland losing that one. France, New Zealand's the other big one. Yeah, that one, it's going to be intriguing to see how the All Blacks finish off their tour. I think France are going to be a much tougher bet than the other two games that the Irish had, the New Zealanders had.
Well, one of the reasons that France are going to be so much tougher is and it's not just because of France and that they're a growing team, and that they probably, for me, if along with the Boks, like the team most likely to sort of be there in 2027, just because they've got youth on their side, and the Boks haven't got youth on their side, but they've got a policy where they're bringing through 3 new players. The one reason I sort of think that the All Blacks might struggle on Saturday night is because they've played those 2 really tough games beforehand, which, by the way, I also think might count against England. I know you say they're battle hardened, but battle hardened can also mean fatigue. I think winning against England and Ireland and then getting up again to beat France might be a little bit of a bridge too far for New Zealand. I think New Zealand are growing. I think they are improving. I don't think that them losing on Saturday night would be a train smash, but I do think that France at home have the edge.
Yeah, and then the only other game is Wales, Australia. Australia should win that one. Wales look like they're in all sorts of turmoil. Warren Gatland, talking about having to cut players and the pain that the Wales are going through. There will be probably a response, and they probably will be brave. But I think Australia is probably just hit a bit of a high at the moment, and they should win that one quite easily.
Well, I think it's a big test for Australia. I told you earlier on, I'm not buying in on one swallow. They're not saying one swallow doesn't make a summer. There's a lot of truth in that, and I don't think that I don't suddenly turn into like an Australia are gonna beat the Lions theorist overnight just because of one.
I'm not there either, so don't worry.
18-minute performance against an England team against an England team that would have expected to win, that had played New Zealand the week before, and they knew they were playing South Africa the following week. I think that I think we spoke about this in our thing earlier in the week, that they probably didn't go in there with quite the same intensity as this is England coming in, and it's the same with Wales are going to hit them hard on Saturday. I don't think there's a heck of a lot going for Wales though. So I will say that Australia will win, but I'm just not. I think the jury's still going to be out on Australia until they play against Ireland the following week. You said it's the last. You said it's the only other game. I've got to correct you there. I don't know what you've got against your mates that you went travelling to Georgia, and you forget that they're playing Italy tomorrow. Big game between Italy and Georgia, two countries with great color. I mean, we all like Italian food. I don't know what they fed you in Georgia, but
the food's brilliant in Georgia. The food's brilliant.
Well, anyway, there's a game between Georgia and Italy tomorrow as well, and on Sunday. And I'm looking forward to watching that just because it'll be something different.
I don't know. Listen, Georgia is a great team to watch, and they've got some. Yeah, everyone talks about their forwards, but they've got some great backs there as well that really, score some great tries as well. So that'd be an interesting one to watch. I'll at least be back in South Africa back then, and then I'll hopefully be able to watch it as well with a nice cold beer in the hand. Yeah, I think just on Wales. I mean, I think the problem with Wales is there's just so much turmoil in Welsh rugby at the moment that. Even if they put on a brave performance, I still think Australia probably have too much. Italy, Georgia, well, Georgia probably feel that after Italy took 50, they've got a chance, and they do have a chance. They're a tough team to beat. That should be an interesting one as well. Both countries make great wine, by the way. That's the other thing that they do. So Georgian wine's quite nice as well. So.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, well, fly well, Brendan.
No, well, I'm hopefully going to be at the airport when the Boks are playing, so I'm hopefully going to see it somewhere. Otherwise, I'll watch the replay. But yeah, I think we'll talk on Monday again, where we've watched all the games and chatted. But it's been good, man. And let's hope for a big Bok victory.
I hope you're awake on Monday.
I'll be awake at some point, I'm sure.
Okay.
Anyway, that's our chat. We'll chat again on Monday.
Okay, thanks. Cheers.